On to this story now. The family of Ahmed Timol is continuing its quest for the truth. It's opposing apartheid policeman Joao Rodrigues' application for a permanent stay of prosecution. Let's get more details on this now, and we're joined by Timol's nephew, Mr. Ahmed Kaji. Mr. Kaji, thank you very much for your time. You and the two families here involved, the Mabelane family and the Hafiji family, you are planning to join in this application with the state, opposing the permanent stay application being brought by Joao Rodrigues.
Yes.
The question, therefore, is you are unhappy with the performance, or should we say the investigations being conducted by the NPA following the judgment of Billy Motley last year.
That's correct, Koli. You know, more than a year has passed and, court proceedings still continue. Judge Motley made a ruling on the 12th of October last year, and Rodrigues' first court appearance was only on the 30th of July. And it's public knowledge that the docket was moving between the Priority Crimes Litigation Unit and the South Gauteng NPA offices. And it was only until the DPP, Ndu Chauke, took this docket and ensured that the investigations commence. So it's deeply, deeply disturbing the pace at which the NPA and the Hawks investigate this matter, despite the fact that the ruling was made on the 12th of October last year. And in addition, Koli, Judge Motley ruled that Neville Els and Seth's sons be charged for perjury. And there again, more than a year later, the investigations continue. And when I continue following up with the NPA, the feedback that is given is that the investigations are continuing. So deeply, deeply disturbing.
Because that was a question I was going to ask you next, as to what is the explanation from the NPA side for clearly tardiness on their part?
There's no explanation, Kuli. And this is the frightening part, that one would have imagined since the ruling made by Judge Motley, that these cases would have been given priority. And what is more discomforting and very, very worrying is that in the papers filed on behalf of the first respondent, which is the Acting National Director of Public Prosecutions, they give no explanation as to why, for the last 20 years, that the Timol matter was not investigated. Remember, Koli, I had written to the NPA in 2002 asking them to investigate this matter. The TRC investigator, P.S. Pichot, traced Joao Rodrigues in 1996, and yet the NPA failed to follow up on this particular matter. And in the
years today, they're continuing in the same vein.
Because the application and the papers that they filed, Koli, they make absolutely no reference as to what was the main cause and what was the reason for them not pursuing this particular matter.
Is there an avenue, Mr. Kaji, that you can possibly explore with regards to the dissatisfaction that you clearly are seeing in as far as the investigation of this matter is concerned?
Look, we await with eagerness the commencements of duties of the new NDPP, Advocate Shamila Batoy, on the 1st of February, to bring to attention. Koli, the Timol family is just one. And this is a family that has been fortunate enough to get an inquest findings reversed October last year. And yet, there's a lack of appreciation, lack of understanding on moving with speed on this particular matter. Rodrigues is 79. Els and sons are in the early 80s. And one gets the clear impression that, that they're hoping that they pass on so that, that these cases can simply disappear. And, apartheid-era bureaucrats who were part of the apartheid system, who are now continuing to be part of the NPA, continuing to be part of the Hawks, are tasked with this mammoth responsibility and mandate to investigate cases that they were part of.
Are you saying that there might just be foul play? Is that what you intimate?
Look, what other analysis can one make, Koli? Do they have in their hearts the pain that the Timol, the Mabelani, the Hafiji, the Biko, the Similani families continue living with on a day-to-day basis? How can it be so difficult for them to investigate just one matter, the Timol matter, that's been in the public domain since last year? All the investigation was done. It was a mere formality for them to have dealt with Rodrigues. It took more than 8 months for Rodrigues to be charged on the 30th of July. Again, what is disturbing, Koli? As the Timol family, Hafiji, Mabelani family, we depend on pro bono services of our comrades in the legal fraternity. Rodrigues has got 3 legal representatives covered by taxpayers' money, which is yours and my money. He's got 1 instructing attorney that previously worked for the State Attorney's Office up till last year, who has now gone into private practice representing Rodrigues. He's got 2 other advocates, one being a SC, senior counsel. Now, all 3 are being paid by taxpayers' money. And we as victims depend on pro bono services of the likes of the Legal Resources Center. Surely this can't be correct.
Just for the benefit of the viewers, Mr. Kaji, Judge Billy Motley last year, ruling at the reopening of the Timol inquest, he ruled that, excuse me, that Ahmed Timol was actually murdered, and as a result of that, he then recommended that the NPA investigate his role, right? Now, the other 2 security branch officers, as you've mentioned them, Neville Else and Seth Sons, they ought to be investigated for perjury. Now, as we today know, the hearing that's going to be heard at the South Gauteng High Court is that of Joao Rodrigues applying for a permanent stay of prosecution on the basis of unfairness in terms of how long it has taken him to be tried, and also the element of age. Are you worried that there possibly might be reasonable prospects for success on his part in as far as the application that he's pursuing now?
Look, we're always optimistic, Colin. Nobody ever imagined that 24 years since the birth of democracy that we will succeed in reversing the inquest findings. So always positive in our thinking, cautiously optimistic, and depending on divine intervention like we always do. But this morning's hearings is merely for us to get Judge Monama to rule that we want to be an intervening party, because we don't want the state to oppose Rodrigues' application for a permanent stay of prosecution on their own. We feel, as a Timol, Mabelani, Hafiji, and many other families, that we have a direct interest to ensure that when this 342 application finally commences, that we don't just leave it in the hands of the state to argue, that the Timol and the other families basically represent all other victims' families, to strongly argue that Rodrigues cannot get away with a permanent stay of prosecution because of time delays, which the state was responsible for, not us as victims' families. And on that basis, he should get away scot-free.
Mr. Kaji, we're completely out of time, but I've got to put this question to you. You've already intimated that there's a new leader in the NPA in the form of Advocate Batoy. Are you optimistic that there is going to be at least a new energy, if you like, inside the NPA? You're already talking about the tardiness in as far as the investigation of your uncle's murder here. Are you optimistic that we might see positive change in that?
We're going to mount pressure, Koli. Let me put it to you this way. We understand she's got many other important items to be dealing with. But the issue of the TRC cases, the fact that more than 24 years later, since the birth of democracy, the Timol family and hundreds of other families eagerly await for these investigations to commence. The comments by the Minister of Justice over the weekend that they're re-looking into TRC cases is positive. But Advocate Batoy can be rest assured that we are not going to be disappearing. And through channels like ENCA, we will continue putting the plight of the Timol, the Biko, the Mabelani, Similani families in the public domain to ensure that we can never forget the sacrifices of our brave men and women who have ensured that we live in a democratic South Africa.
Mthias Kaji, thank you very much for making the time this morning.
My pleasure.
Thanks indeed. He is the nephew of the late Ahmed Timol, the anti-apartheid activist.